Used to be pointing.
All right, good morning, everybody.
You tell me to go back to the woods.
Yeah, this morning we are going to be in
Can I go?
1 Kings chapter 4, verse 1.
Verse 1.
Yes,
Okay.
1 Kings chapter 4, verse 1. And I'm going to let Brother Rick read.
No, you're not. Brother Rick done looked that chapter over. If you want Brother Rick to do anything, Brother Rick gonna find it on the Bible and play.
Brother Rick was trying to get me to preach it now, so he's going to have to read it. No, I'm just messing with you. All right. Yes, this chapter is full of names of Solomon's administration, individuals that made up his administration. And let me tell you, their names are, if you're not from that region of the world, they're really hard to pronounce in English. So,
That's why you let the Bible read it.
yeah, you know what? I do have that Bible app, so I may convert over there.
Either that or do like some pastors and just say big word.
Yep. Yeah, big word, big word. Well, if that's the case, I would have every other word go big word. So let me get over there.
Or go to chapter 5 and just say Solomon had a lot of administrators.
Yeah. So here we go. I'm gonna go ahead and let it read for you this chapter, because it is full of, like I said, words that
Are big and
big
hard.
words and hard to pronounce. So this will be the King James version. So if you have the New King James or the NIV or the NIV.
We only have one heathen with the NIV.
Who? Two. She said two.
Two.
Yeah. So anyway,
Slay me now.
it's
That can be done.
it may be a little bit different. So here we go. Maybe.
1 Kings 4. So King Solomon was king over all Israel. And these were the princes which he had: Azariah the son of Zadok the priest, Elihareph and Ahiah the sons of Shishah, scribes, Jehoshaphat the son of Ahilud, the recorder, and Benaiah the son of Jehoiada was over the host, and Zadok and Abiathar were the priests. And Azariah the son of Nathan was over the officers, and Zabad the son of Nathan was principal officer and the king's friend. And Ahisha was over the household, and Adoniram the son of Abda was over the tribute. And Solomon had 12 officers over all Israel, which provided bills for the king and his household. Each man his month in a year made provision. And these are their names: the son of Hur in Mount Ephraim, the son of Dekar in Makaz, and in Shaalbim, and in Beth Shemesh, and Elon Bethanan, the son of Hesed in Arabath. To him pertained Sercho, and all the land of Ephah, the son of Abinadab, in all the region of Dor, which had Taphath, the daughter of Solomon, to wife. Baanah, the son of Ahilud, to him pertained Talach and Megiddo, and all Bethshan, which is by Zartanah beneath Jezreel, from Bethshan to Abel Meholah, even unto the place that is beyond Jokneam. The son of Geber, in Ramoth Gilead, to him pertain the towns of Jair, the son of Manasseh, which are in Gilead. To him also pertain the region of Argob, which is in Bashan, 80 great cities with walls and brazen bars. Ahinadab, the son of Edo, had Mahanaim. Ahimaaz was in Naphtali. He also took Basmath, the daughter of Solomon, to wife. Baanah, the son of Ahijah, was in Asher and in Aloth. Jehoshaphat, the son of Paruah, in Issachar. Shimei, the son of Elah, in Benjamin. Geber, the son of Uri, was in the country of Gilead, in the country of Sihon, the king of the Amorites, and of Og, the king of Bashan. And he was the only officer which was in the land. Judah and Israel were many as the sand which is by the sea in multitude, eating and drinking and making merry. And Solomon reigned over all kingdoms, from the river unto the land of the Philistines, and unto the border of Egypt. They brought presents, and served Solomon all the days of his life. Solomon Solomon's provisions for one day was 30 measures of fine flour, and 80 measures of meal, 10 fat oxen, and 20 oxen out of the pastures, and 100 sheep beside halves and roebucks, and fallow deer and fatted fowl, for he had dominion over all the region on this side the river, from Tifsah even to Azar, over all the kings on this side the river, and he had peace on all sides round about him. And Judah and Israel dwelt safely, every man under his vine and under his fig tree, from Dan even to Beersheba, all the days of Solomon. And Solomon had 40,000 stalls of horses for his chariots, and 12,000 horsemen. And those officers provided victual for King Solomon, and for all that came unto King Solomon's table, every man in his month. They lacked nothing, barley also and straw for the horses, and dromedaries brought they unto the place where the officers were, every man according to his charge. And God gave Solomon wisdom and understanding exceeding much, and largeness of heart, even as the sand that is on the seashore. And Solomon's wisdom excelled the wisdom of all the children of the east country, and all the wisdom of Egypt. For he was wiser than all men, than Ethan the Ezrahite, and Heman, and Chalcol, and Darda, the sons of Mahol, and his fame was in all nations round about. And he spake 3,000 proverbs, and his songs were 1,005. And he spake of trees, from the cedar tree that is in Lebanon, even unto the hyssop that springeth out of the wall. He spake also of beasts, and of fowl, and of creeping things,
Did I mess with it?
and of fishes. And there came all people to hear the wisdom of Solomon, from all kings of the earth, which had heard of his wisdom.
Okay.
So why didn't they just read the last two verses?
I don't know. It says, also he spoke of the trees from the cedar tree of Lebanon, even to the hyssop that springs out of the wall. He spoke also of animals, and birds and creeping things of the fish, and men of all nations from all the kings on the earth who had heard of his wisdom came to hear the wisdom of Solomon. Yeah, I think it did say that. So.
Yeah. It did, yeah.
But as you can see, yes, very much so. It was full of words that I probably cannot pronounce. Babe, is that King James Version or was that?
King
I
James.
think it was.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was following it.
Okay. All right.
What's one?
So we see here that he had a lot of officials, right? A lot of officials to help him run the kingdom. It says, and his officials, just as the story of mothers contending over one baby was an example of Solomon's great wisdom, this chapter also shows Solomon's wisdom. The wise way he selected, trained, and empowered and supervised leaders is clearly seen here. It says Solomon was a leader of leaders. No wise leader does it all by themselves. For those of us that have served in the military, we know that we set out a lot of tasks to those that are under us that are in leadership roles in the military. We usually use our NCOs, our non-commissioned officers. If we're a staff NCO, a staff non-commissioned officer. And then the officers use his staff non-commissioned officers in order to, so it's kind of like a hierarchy of command leadership, so you get your ones that are at that bottom stage that are just starting out to gather information that goes to your staff NCOs on up into your officers so they can make the best decision for that company or that wing going into the direction that the commanding officer wants it to go. In this case, being the king. Okay, so we see here that Solomon knew that, and he entrusted his his men with leadership roles instead of trying to do it all by himself. That's like a mother, like it says here, a mother can't do everything all by herself. She has to be able to rely on the father to help her guide her children in a Christian way, to help with the discipline, or to help feed them, or to help get them to bed, or to get them off to school, or, so in this case, Solomon knew that and utilized his administration to the best of his ability with God's leadership, So God was over Solomon and Solomon was over them, So we see that it says no wise leader does it all themselves. They know how to delegate responsibility and authority and get the job done. Solomon's great wisdom enabled him to see the needs to get trained and employ the right people to meet those needs. He had the priests and the scribes and the recorders. Solomon's government was structured much like the modern nations of today. It says he had officials who served as ministers or department secretaries over their specific areas of responsibility. And we see in chapter 26 where it talks about Solomon had 40,000 stalls of horses. Well, who do you think took care of the horses? And then, you know what I'm saying? So, and then he had chariots. Who do you think fixed the chariots? And 12,000 horsemen. Who do you think kept their gear? On up. So it says Solomon's leadership was organized, and everybody knows that if your leadership is not organized, it's going to be chaos. You're never going to get anything done. Any task that you set out to do will just end up in failure, because you'll end up moving on to something else because you don't feel like you can accomplish it. Because you don't have that positive feedback coming back from your leadership, He knew that God is a God of design and organization, and that things simply operate better and more efficiently when organized. It says Jehoshaphat, who had served under David, and we know this in 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 16, and chapter 20, verse 24, continued as the recorder. So he was the scribe. He recorded everything, As such, he was more a chief of prodigal than a rememberer or recorder of the past. It says his status was almost that of a Secretary of State. We know that Samuel was revered by David very, very much so, Since Abiathar had been exiled by Solomon, and we know this because we just read it in 1 Kings chapter 2, verse 26, it says, his inclusion here as a priest seems to be a problem. It must be remembered, however, that while Solomon would only reassign Abiathar's responsibility, he would not take away his title nor his dignity as a priest. We know that in 1 Kings chapter 2 that he did take him away as the priest there, but we know that he did not take his title away. No. So he being a wise king that he was, that he allowed Abiathar to continue to keep his authority as his title, so that people wouldn't look down on him and stuff like that, And I'm sure they already looked down on him because he got dismissed as the priest.
That's right.
But in 7 through 9, we see where it talks about Solomon's governors. Okay, he said he had 12 governors over all Israel, right? 12 governors. Why 12?
12 months in a year.
Yep.
There's 12
Tribes.
Thank you.
Were
That's the right answer I'm looking for. It says these men were responsible for taxation in their individual districts. Okay, in their individual districts. The districts were not strictly separated by tribal borders, but often according to mountains, land, and region, just like we are today. We have, Russ County, and we have Henderson County, and we have, all these.
54 counties.
Huh?
254 counties.
There you go. So we have 254 counties. So, it says Solomon's leadership was creative. Says we can imagine that in the past, 12 governors would be apportioned strictly along tribal lines. Solomon knew that the way you did it, before wasn't necessarily the best way to do it at the present time. He was willing to try new things. And as we all know, if any one of us has been in any type of leadership role, you know, we can't think of everything. If we're a leader and we try to do everything our way, sometimes we falter. Sometimes we don't have the right way. I mean, I was in the Marine Corps 25 years, and I have learned things from kids that had just come in the Marine Corps, only had 6 months in the service. Why? Because they were brought up a different way, and their way seemed a little bit better. So I tried it. I was not about to say, hey, just because I've been in longer doesn't mean I know the right way. And there were several times whenever, you know, more than several, that I was like, hey man, I appreciate that. I needed that, you know. You got the day off, bye. I don't want to see you no more. Well, first time
Like keeping your
I just told you to take the day off.
keeping your team all on the same level.
But a
right?
paper trail after that. I appreciate your help. Here's you got the rest of the day off, you know. So, but we see here that Solomon, he knew that. He knew how to lead. He knew how to take other people's opinions and other people's suggestions into account, you know, which made him a more rounded king, don't you think?
So, yeah.
Because he was open, you know, open about it. It says the absence, though we see here, the absence of the reference to Judah in this list would be explained by there was only one official in the homeland. Says, that is, these 12 districts were additional to Judah, which remained unchanged. Some say that they were untaxed. So, I don't know why, but says each one made provisions for 1 month of the year. Says taxes were paid in grain and livestock, which were used to support the royal court and the central government. Each governor was responsible for 1 month out of the year. Okay. Says Solomon's leadership was not oppressive. It doesn't seem too much to do 1/12 of the work. So each of the governors didn't feel overwhelmed by the burden of raising so much in taxes. You know, it's like you going out to eat and you got 5 people, you know, or you got 4 people and the check's $100. Everybody pays $25. Guess what? Good to go, right? But if that one person is stuck with that $100 check, it's kind of burdensome on that one person, right? Oh yeah, yeah. Jackie goes. She goes.
I was just getting a drink.
I know. I'm just messing with you. So, want to take the time also to look at the prosperity of Solomon. Okay, can anybody tell me, you know, about his prosperity and the peace that he had within his kingdom?
Well, they still claim about looking for Solomon's mind.
Yeah, verse 20 and 21 over here it says, Judah and Israel were as numerous as the sand by the sea in multitude, eating and drinking and rejoicing. So Solomon reigned over all kingdoms from the river to the land of the Philistines, as far as the border of Egypt. They brought tribute. In King James Version, it says present, I think. So they brought presents or tribute and served Solomon all the days of his life. Does that sound like somebody that's oppressed? Somebody that's bringing presents to the king? No? So we see here that the reign of Solomon was of a golden age, you know, for Israel as a kingdom.
Yeah.
The population grew robustly, and it was a season of great prosperity, allowing plenty of leisure time and pursuit of good pleasures. So we see that here in verse 20 and 21, it shows and says that they were as many as the sands of the sea, sands by the sea in multitude. Have you ever been out to the beach and just picked up some sand out of the beach? That's a lot of sand. That's a lot of granules, right? In one little hand. Just think, we're talking about the whole beach. It's a lot of folks. But it says that, they were drinking and rejoicing. So, I don't know too many people that are being depressed that are drinking and rejoicing, so unless it's Paul and Silas. So we see here that, so it says, so Solomon reigned over all kingdoms from the river to the land of the Philistines as far as the border of Egypt. It's a lot of land, a lot of regions, a lot of districts. But we know just from here reading the scripture that the governors had this stuff under control. Again, they only had to supply 1/12 of the taxes, and so they didn't feel overwhelmed or burdened by the fact that this is what their region or their district was supposed to give. Solomon,
And it gave them time to the people.
absolutely,
Like you said,
11
didn't
months,
have to be dumped on
right
them
away.
all at one time.
Right. Absolutely. And we see here that Solomon was not a warrior or a general. It says this peace was achieved by King David and was enjoyed by King Solomon. It was also assisted under God's providence. It says by a season of decline and weakness among Israel's neighboring states. So we see here that because of what his father did, what King David did, Solomon didn't have to do that.
That's right.
Solomon was living in a time where things were good times, good pleasures, good
Peace.
good peace. Absolutely, because of the weakness of what King David had done to all the kings around him and the way he had ruled. It gave Solomon that peace and enjoyment and fulfillment that Israel needed. You know what I'm saying? So, are you guys hot?
No, it's just me.
Oh, okay. So what did it say about Solomon's provisions that he got? Just think if you were to get this type of provisions, or what the church could do with this much provisions to help out other people in need. It said that Solomon's provisions for one day was 30 measures of fine flour, 60 cores of meal, 10 fatted oxen, 20 oxen from the pastures, and 100 sheep, besides deer, gazelles, roebucks, and fatted fowl. So, I know some of yours says it differently. What does the NIV say, Jackie?
Same thing.
Does it? Does anybody have anything different other than the King James Version and the NIV? So we see, the New King James is what I have. So anyway, it says 10 fatted oxen. This was an exceptionally large daily meal for one man. It shows Solomon clearly had a problem with gluttony. This is a small Bible commentator joke, but we normally avoid. But this provision was for Solomon's entire household and his royal court. So it wasn't just 10 fatted cows for just him.
Yeah.
It was all of his royal court and his family. If you look at it in that sense, it was probably. But I'm telling you right now, these guys had to really be on their toes, because I know Jackie and Terry have cows. How often do your cows come in and go out and have calves and stuff like that?
How do they?
Yeah, I know, but how often does that happen? Do you guys have calves born?
Every 9 months.
Every 9 months. Well, you look at that, every 9 months. So, but they're killing off how many per day? For one family? 10?
10.
Every 9 months? And then you have 10.
Plus other game and.
Plus the other game stuff and other meat. Yeah, but you got 10 being killed every day. And they're having them every 9 months. So that'd be
That means
a
he
lot of.
has hundreds of cows.
Yes, lots of cows. Lots of cows and stuff. So that means that, And bulls, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, yeah, you can't have a calf without a bull and a
He
calf.
has hundreds of bovines.
Yeah,
Well, look at you.
yeah.
Bovine.
She's bringing out big words,
with them big-
school over here.
Maybe she should have read them big words in there.
Now,
She said no.
Hey,
So here's just a little tidbit for you. It says some estimate that this much food every day could feed 15,000 to 36,000 people. That's just an estimation. It supplied considerable more than Solomon's household, large as it was. So everybody, you can tell that they had leftovers. So more than likely, with King Solomon to being the type of king he was, the food that they didn't eat, 9 times out of 10, he shared with others that were, less fortunate. I would presume. This would probably go down to the guards families, and stuff like that. So we see the fatted oxen are pen-fed cattle in contrast to open grazing varieties. The 30 cores, I have 30 cores of fine flour. I know in King James Version it said measures. It says the core equal to 220 liters or about 55 gallons. Okay, so you got 30 55 gallon, maybe bags or gallons of flour. It says we can accurately.
It's 185 bushels.
Yeah, it says we can accurately picture 55 gallon drums full of fine flour being delivered every day.
every day.
Yeah. So 100 sheep, besides deer, gazelles, roebucks, and fatted fowl. This list is not meant to stress the idea of luxury. The stress is on the idea that this daily provision indicated the great prosperity of the kingdom. So there again, this was a striving metropolis area. I mean, this area was not only probably in trade, but everything else. You got that much, that many animals and stuff like that, then you can only guess what the business aspect would have been like in there. Again, it says in the first part of this chapter that there was that many people there. They had a barter and trade system. They had an economic system that was probably, because they were rejoicing and stuff, that it was probably prospering too. It says the political stability of Solomon's kingdom. We'll talk about that next. The chapter 24 through 28. Verse 24 through 28. Yeah, it says, "For he had dominion over all the region on the side of the river from Tipsah, even to Gaza, namely over the kings on the side of the river, and he had peace on every side all around him. And Judah and Israel dwelt safely, each man under his vine and his fig tree, from Dan as far as Beersheba, all the days of Solomon." Solomon had 40,000 stalls of horses, and we went through that. But as we can see,
was against God's commands for the kings.
right, because here it says on mine it says 40,000 stalls. Though the Hebrew text reads 40,000, this was probably a copyist error in transcribing the text, and it should have read more or less 4,000.
Don't believe in copyist errors.
Right, Second Corinthians 9:25. So myself, I'm like Rick. I think more than likely, if they had that many people in this region or this area of his kingdom, it was more than likely probably 40,000, because he had a great big army. With that many people, he had a great big army, and I would think it would be more or less 40,000.
Work details
And everything else. Yes, it says,
but they prospered mightily.
yes, they
Yes, it
did.
did. Under God.
What is it, the ratio for every combat soldier you got is what, there's 4 or 5 supporters?
4. I think it's 4. I know.
It's 4 or 5, one, yeah.
Yeah. Says each man under his vine and his fig tree. What does it mean by that? Anybody know?
They all had land, they had their farms, they had peace and prosperity.
As well. Absolutely.
That is one of the things that's to come back under the millennial kingdom, is that everybody's gonna have that health and prosperity and, you know, not have need or want.
Right. And we see there it says, and Judah and Israel dwelt safely under each man under his vine and his fig tree from Dan as far as Beersheba all the days of Solomon. So they didn't have to worry about outside entities coming in and trying to take their land or to kill them over their land or anything like that. And again, we mentioned that earlier, was mainly because of what King David had done prior to Solomon's rule.
And had Solomon and his son Rehoboam continued the early practices of their kingdoms, it would have continued.
Absolutely. But I think, to me, I think when King Solomon came in, and we all remember when we first started reading in 1 Kings, the decisions that he had upon his plate and the way he went about ruling and making those decisions, that led all the kings around in other regions and kingdoms beside him and around him, let them know right quick in a hurry that, hey, he's he's all about justice and wisdom, and he knows what he's doing, and I don't think I want to try him. I think that set the stage for him God set the stage there for Solomon to, once he did that, it let everybody else around him know and realize that, hey, he's a wise king. He's not going to be tricked in any,
And as long as he followed God,
that's right.
That's the main thing.
went by the wisdom of God,
That's right.
he was supremely blessed.
Yes.
It says, each man under his vine and his fig tree. This was a proverbial expression for a time of peace and prosperity in Israel, indicating safety from both international and external enemies. And we see this in Isaiah 36:16, Micah 4:4, and Zechariah 3:10. It talks about it. Solomon had 40,000 stalls of horses for his chariots. So the famous stalls of Solomon show what a vast cavalry he assembled for Israel. 2 Chronicles chapter 9 verse 25 is a parallel passage and has like 40,000 is what it says, 4,000 chariots instead of 40,000. The smaller number seems correct, and the larger number is probably due to, like I said, it said copy it's there. Even this says it. The Bible, my coordinate says it. So, but I might, Brother Rick, I kind of feel like that number may have been correct because of the people that were assembled there in that region, in that kingdom. It does say, unfortunately, it also shows that Solomon did not take God's word as seriously as he should in Deuteronomy chapter 17, verse 16. And this is what Brother Rick was referring to. It says, God spoke specifically to the future kings of Israel, and this is what he says, but he shall not multiply horses for himself. It says, one may argue if 20 or 100 horses violates the command to not multiply horses. Certainly 40,000 stalls of horses is multiplying horses.
Even 4,000.
Even 4,000 would be, yeah. But there again, I seem to think, from a military standpoint, and I think probably Brother Roger would agree, that if you got that many people in your army, you have to supply each one of them with a way of transportation and, with armor, with the necessity, the tools that are necessities to do their job.
Yep.
And there were usually 3 people to a chariot, a driver, a shieldsman, and a archer or a spearman.
Right. So, and at any moment, a horse could go down, so you would have to have a backup to that, that lead horse or whoever it is, which one, because you always
But
have
the
to have
main
lead.
reason was that if you were multiplying, say, tanks, which it was equivalent of a modern day tank,
Right.
where was your faith in God? Your faith would be in your numerical strength.
Right. Absolutely. And that's where I think this lesson plan is bringing that into view, is that saying the fact, like you said, that it was against what God had told them by multiplying his horses. He was actually doing what God did not want him to do.
Because God was their strength.
That's right. He's putting his, like you just mentioned, seems like that would be putting his faith in his numbers.
And
Instead
not
of
in God going out before them.
Right, absolutely. In 29:31, we see Solomon is famous for his God-given wisdom, where God gave Solomon wisdom and exceedingly great understanding. It says his fame was in all surrounding nations. So we see that all the other nations, gave him the respect that he deserved. Solomon's 32:34 says Solomon's broad knowledge of science and nature. Talks about the 3,000 proverbs and the 1,005 songs. And then he spoke of the trees and the animals and the creeping things and also the fish. So again, this just shows what knowledge God had given him throughout his reign over over Israel. So,
And they had to be good deer hunters. There are all those deer, you couldn't just go to the woods for 4 months and not get one.
absolutely. And with the amount of, and that said, not only deer, Ralph, it talked about fowl, the fowl of the air and all that stuff. So you had to be pretty good to shoot some bird with a bow.
Yeah, they probably raised them.
Oh yeah, more than likely, I would think so too. So, you don't think they gave him a sporting chance? They shoot, no, get him up there.
About the same as you give a coon a pack of coon dogs.
Yeah, you didn't want to lose your arrow,
Guys, Jerry Clyre said that coon had every right and opportunity to jump down and whoop all
6
them
of them.
dogs and
Yeah, that's right.
go on his way.
Do we have any questions over this? I know this chapter was kind of, it was filled.
Names.
It was actually filled with really good information about Solomon's administration.
But it was the last 10 verses.
Yeah, the last 10 verses makes definite sense, but with all those names, you can understand why I wanted to look at the Bible that read. But there again, we see that Solomon was allowing God to lead him at the times, and we see God's direction that he had Israel going after David's rule had ended into Solomon's rule. So there's no questions. Anybody got any questions? No? Brother Ralph, will you close us in a word of prayer, sir?
Thank you for your word and for the knowledge that you give us, the love and your wisdom.
Yes.
We thank you for each person here and those who couldn't be here today and those that are sick. That you might touch them, those that are hurting, heal their bodies and their minds.
Yes.
Be with us so this will follow, that your name may be honored and glorified in Jesus' name.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Ralph.